So in order to run the stats for the bottom finishers, you do the exact same thing. Stat calc, one bar stats, just like you did, but now tell it L1, not L2, but L1 comma L3, different set of frequency lists. So you're going to grab L1 comma L3. That's all.
Oh.
Please.
Is this for the bottom?
This is for the bottoms. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We have the tops, and we're not going to go any further than that for a moment. Now, Valerie, you're going to have to re-enter the frequencies into your frequency list. I apologize for that. And it's kind of an annoyance. There is a way around it. If you give me 5 minutes after class, I'll show you.
Okay.
We can use that Y list as well. It's a little cumbersome, but we can use that too.
Okay.
And then press enter. Is the average different from the bottom finishers from the top finishers? It looks like it. It's about 44 years of age, where the top finishers are 34 years of age. And I'm going to be honest with you, the reason I looked at this, I'm going to call this equals, it's actually a product. The standard deviation, is that different? It's at 13 versus 9. It's maybe 50% bigger, 50% wider on average from the distances. So tell me something about this, the clumpiness or the lack of clumpiness, or let's use the words you guys, the consistency or inconsistency of the top versus the bottom. Which data set is more consistent?
The top.
The top finishers are more consistent. They're more clustered around that age of 34 years. Then the bottom ones are more spread out around that age of 44 years. Now the question is how much more? Well, you can say that a couple different ways. I made a percentage. I said 13 is about 50% wider than 9, but that might be meaningless. It'll become helpful when we look at the graph that Danielle was pointing out before. I keep referring to you because you made a great statement. I want to test early. I want to test with a look at the data, because right now, looking at the data in this form, it's hard to tell the shape. It's hard to tell what the shape is. I mean, you can kind of tell because there are single-digit numbers and double-digit numbers, but looking at a number as the number of digits in it in relative size is misleading. There's a 10, there's a 19, there's a 44, there's a 28. They're all double-digit numbers, but they're higher and lower than each other. So we're going to make a graph of this momentarily. But right now, we have a measure of center and a measure of spread. Okay? And that's where your traditional stat course ends. You know how to calculate an average, you know how to calculate a standard deviation. I have a TV in my office with a VCR. My wife tried to throw them away when we moved to bed. She tried to donate them to Goodwill. I was like, no, no, no. And she tried to get all the VHS movies. I was like, no. I did all of my work. VHS, TV set up in the office. And Jurassic, but the reason I'm telling you this is I was watching Jurassic Park over the past month. I get changed from my commute home in my office about 5 minutes, and I put the movie in, watch 5 minutes a day. Just watch the part of Jurassic Park where Ian Malcolm, you ever seen Jurassic Park, movie Jurassic Park? A couple of you, there's a scene where Ian Malcolm, the mathematician, is yelling at John, the guy that made the island, and says, the reason you've now discovered how to extract dinosaur DNA, and as you've built these creatures, did you ever stop and ask yourself if you should have done that? See what I'm getting at? What I'm getting at now is you just calculated an average and a standard deviation. Should you use this to talk about the data set? And the answer is maybe. But do you remember what, I think we mentioned it earlier, what kind of data gives you a bomb-proof excuse to talk about averages and therefore standard deviations? The data should be roughly, we mentioned it earlier, bell shaped. When you have symmetric unimodal, which we just call bell as a general rule of thumb in here, which I love by the way, keep calling it that. When you have highly skewed data, you shouldn't use the average. I have data to play with later, and we will. I've got it right here, my Facebook data. But unless you have roughly symmetric unimodal data, you shouldn't even be talking about averages. In other words, you shouldn't build Jurassic Park, because you might have skewed data. Right? Make sense? So the question is now, is this data roughly bell-shaped? Well, let's go look at it, shall we? Let's go look at it. That's the whole point. So now let's set up two graphs. Let's start with the top finishers. Top finishers. So, remember how to get to the plot screens?
Second.
No, good answer. Second y equals. Great answer. Fantastic answer. Second y equals. And I'm going to go turn the movie off and back on again. See, this would be a work study position. Running around, pushing buttons on a camera. Love to pay you to do that.